Welcome to Defending Our Children, everyone. Today we have on for you a former Air Force veteran, law enforcement veteran of several different agencies, federal and local, Mike Crawford. He's a candidate for sheriff in Maricopa County, Arizona. Mike, not only thanks for your service out there, but thanks for running for sheriff, and we need good people in there. So welcome to the show, and we look forward to having a great chat with you about how children are vulnerable and what we can all do about it.
Well, one of the primary reasons I got into law enforcement was to protect the most vulnerable, and that's the children and animals. They're the truly innocent. Did not choose, and most of the time they cannot choose what happens to them. So we have to stand in and we have to protect them.
I like that. Defend the defenseless. It just feels right. And I encourage more people to do it. Well, Mike, tell us a little bit more of your path. So we have the basic gist of kind of what you've done professionally, but let people know anything more that you'd like for them to know, and just kind of let us know the journey, what brought you to law enforcement and running for sheriff and so forth. And then let's get into the children.
My path to law enforcement, I was a non-commissioned officer in the Air Force. I was a mechanic. Love working with my hands, love being outside and enjoying the beautiful weather. I served overseas during the Gulf War, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, came back to the United States. I was working in Florida, enjoying the beautiful weather again, loved working outside. And I was outside working on my aircraft, a Boeing 707 air refueler. And I was assigned to 41st Air Rescue, PJs, that fateful day. You know, I call it that dark and stormy night. And I was out on the flight line working on the airplane, and I got struck by lightning. That was God's way of not so subtly telling me I needed to change my life and change my path. And that ended my military career in a rather abrupt way. I was active duty for 4 years and 7 months. It's kind of an odd number, but when things happen that way, you know,
yeah, well, that
fulfill my full enlistment.
Yeah, Mike, that sounds intense. I mean, what did it, I know it was not nice, obviously. Just give us briefly, what's it like to get hit by lightning, to the strike? What did it feel like? What happened to your body?
So I remember it more like a dream than anything, because it obviously knocked me out. I was touching the aircraft, and that's the thing that saved me actually from it being a fatal incident. We had just put 70,000 pounds of fuel on. So we had the aircraft was grounded, and I was touching the plane. So I didn't take the full brunt of the electricity. Some of the grounding points took that. So I took a third of it. And it blew me backwards, and I hit the nose landing gear, took a steering actuator to the back of the head. I have a traumatic brain injury from that. Another crew chief and an engine mechanic were in the cockpit above me, and one of them got kind of zapped a little bit on the arm. He said it was about like 110 outlet, and they saw me staggering off and fall face down on the ramp. And I don't even remember that, but they ran down the ramp, down the ladder, grabbed me, threw me in the truck, and got me to the hospital. They were able to revive me and re-stabilize my heartbeat. It blew my glasses off. I had a metal retainer. I just gotten my braces out, actually. I was pretty young. I was in my 20s. Actually, what's today's date? July 6th. So my alive day is in 4 days. It was July 10th.
Oh, wow.
So in 1991. So it was 32 years ago. They did a bunch of x-rays and stuff, but I had a metal retainer bonded to the inside of my teeth, and it melted that, burned my tongue. My watch stopped.
A lot of energy.
A lot of stuff broke. I found out years later that I had actually fractured one of the vertebrae in my back. They didn't find it on the x-rays. It was pretty fine fractures, but it healed improperly, and I have a lot of lingering issues from that. And
was that from your muscles contracting?
I'm sorry?
Was that from your muscles contracting?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things, when you get electrocuted, man-made electricity or lightning, the muscles on both sides contract. So if you move your arm this way, the muscle on the inside contracts and the one on the outside relaxes. But when you get electrocuted, they both contract and tense up, and it can shatter the bone. So what happened in my back, the muscles on both sides of my spine contracted, and it actually compressed my spine. So it compressed 9 different discs in my back, and it ruptured a few discs and bowed some discs and fractured one of my vertebrae. It's not really good for you. I don't recommend it.
No, I suppose not, man. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. It sounds very intense, and Man, to realize your muscles are capable of that level of activation,
Oh yeah.
you know, that's pretty wild.
And they're strong. So when they get activated, there's been reported incidents of femurs and radius bones in the arm just being shattered from the muscles just contracting so hard.
Yeah,
But some of the other lingering effects are, I had PTSD for a long time and suffered from extreme weather anxiety. So we have beautiful electrical storms here in Arizona in the desert. And for a long time, I didn't get to enjoy that. So
yeah, you're still bracing for impact, man. Poor thing. I'm sorry about that. I'm glad it sounds better though now, according to
Oh, yeah.
how you're describing it. So that's good. Time's a good healer. It's merciful. I think God's a merciful God and helps us too over time. So, well, good, man. Well, you went on into law enforcement. Tell us a little bit about that path, and we'll start talking about what you saw with children, what you know about them.
Well, so the biggest thing, God doesn't give us things we can't handle. So that was pretty rough. I was dealt a pretty rough blow there and ended my military career pretty young in my early 20s. And you think, what do you do from there? Some people quit and think I'm disabled. I can't do anything, and they live on disability and woe is me. And that's it. But that's not me. I'm a fighter. So I went back home and got hired on with the sheriff's office and went into law enforcement. And God changed my path and gave me a different direction, and I was able to, my service to my country was one of my most proudest things I've ever done in my life, and I'm so proud that I was able to do that. But going into law enforcement, I was able to more directly impact people on a more personal level, and directly save lives and directly impact people's lives and help a more personal way. So I went to the sheriff's office back home in New Mexico and started there and worked with some amazing people. The sheriff that hired me was an old cowboy, Roger Lassiter. He was a great guy, and he took things in a very kickback, subtle way and taught me a lot of great things on how to handle personal relationships and not get drunk on power. As a law enforcement officer, as a government official, you have a lot of power. It was not to govern the people. It was the biggest thing he taught me was, you work for these people. They are your boss.
Yeah.
And he would say, I'm the sheriff. I'm the most powerful man in the county as far as the law is concerned. But I work for you. You're my deputy, but I work for you. It's my job to make sure you have everything you need to do your job. And
there's a leader right there. That's a true leader. And there's so precious few of those left anymore.
Well, and I learned that in the military as well. You lead from the front. And I was in non-commissioned officer school whenever Bush declared war on Iraq. We have the finest military in the world, and they train the finest leaders and the best leaders in the world. I'm so appreciative that I had the opportunity to go through that. And I look back now, and that was God's path. We don't get to choose our path, but there's things that happen in our life that are chosen for us.
Yes, sir. Once you tune into it, you look back, and hindsight's 2020. You can look back and say, wow, that's pretty brilliant. Yeah. The big man upstairs put me through that. I love it when we see that, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more with Mike Crawford. Welcome back to Defending Our Children, everyone. We're on with Mike Crawford. He is a Maricopa County Sheriff candidate, military law enforcement veteran. We're talking about him getting struck by lightning and how God has directed his path to prepare him for the future, what he may have for him. So I love hearing these stories because the hindsight is brilliantly conceived when you look back on it. We don't always see it when we're kind of walking our journey, and I don't think we're necessarily supposed to. But when you look back on it, you can see the brilliance and the journey, the path, and the preparation for what you're supposed to do later in life. So, Mike, please continue.
Well, some of it's the wisdom, and this isn't white. I'm a hot rodder, so it's chrome, right? So
okay, all right.
It comes with age and wisdom, but we earn that age and wisdom through a lot of youth and mistakes, right? So going with the sheriff's office, the San Juan County Sheriff's Office butts right up against the Navajo Indian Reservation. The Navajo Indian Reservation is the largest Indian reservation in the United States. There's also the Ute Indian Reservation there. And I had a unique opportunity. I grew up there. I grew up and learned some Navajo. The Navajo tribe is actually, they call themselves the Dene. And I learned a lot about ancient Indian cultures there. And one of the biggest problems we have with sex trafficking and with kidnappings in the United States. We have 22 recognized federal tribes. The hardest hit culture or group of people in the United States is our indigenous peoples. Our tribal peoples are targeted. A lot of it is because of their culture. They're quiet. They keep to themselves. And they're inherently, because of the way that their culture is, they're targeted because of that. A lot of their areas are remote. A lot of where they live, they don't have running water or electricity or phone. So if somebody is captured, if a child is grabbed off the reservation, it takes a long time for it to get reported. So predators target the weak.
Of course. Yep, they always do. So it's a conducive environment for the predators to snatch and run and not be reported, or if it's underreported or it's reported late, and that all benefits the predators. And the children deserve better, but the situation is the way it is there. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement.
Absolutely.
I would love to see better protections for the children there.
Well, they just passed, Biden's current administration just passed a new group. They're sending out investigators and prosecuting attorneys all over the nation. It was just announced today that are specifically going to assist in indigenous kidnappings and sex trafficking, human trafficking investigations, because it has been such a huge problem. Now, we're about 35 years too late, but at least somebody is finally acknowledging the issue and finally stepping forward with our federal government. I think they're assigning 20 investigators and attorneys. It's a very small step, but at least it's an initial step, and somebody, thank God, they're finally doing something.
Yeah, I saw a film. I can't recall the name of it right off the top of my head, but we were on a flight. It was about Native American sex trafficking, and it was heartbreaking. I was very upset when we landed and the film was over, and I was telling my wife, I have to help. I have to do something, about this. And I started approaching some friends, and I was very quickly shut down. And that thing was, hey, Craig, you're a whitey, and it's their problem. It's their res. They don't want you there. Like, if you try to go on there and try to help them with their problem, you're not gonna be welcome. Like, okay, well, I don't want to force myself where I'm not wanted, but I do celebrate the fact that there is anything good happening. If the children can be protected there, I don't care who does it. My heart's for the little ones. And I love hearing when there are solutions and they are protected to a greater degree. So.
And the indigenous tribes, they're protective of their culture and things, but they're not necessarily that standoffish when it comes to taking help, especially if it's somebody targeting the women and children on their tribe and within their families. They will take help. It just has to be done properly and respectfully.
Sure. Yeah.
And if it's approached that way and from a standpoint of respect, they will absolutely take help. And that's one of the issues here in Maricopa County. The kidnapping capital of the world, do you know where that is?
Where?
Mexico City.
Okay.
The kidnapping capital of the United States, Phoenix.
Okay.
Here in Maricopa County, the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office, the office that I'm running for, is the 4th largest law enforcement agency in the United States. They have a budget over $720 million a year. Wow. Currently, there's no proactive unit for sex trafficking or human trafficking.
Yeah, well, I could tell you from personal experience, we reach out to people all the time. Would you like to run joint operations with us? We've got a proven template. We've got 100% conviction rate. And in any major city, they won't say no. They just shine you on and slow roll you until you go away.
So the sheriff's office here it's a humongous department. It's the 4th largest department in the United States, in the kidnapping capital of the United States, and they don't have a proactive division to do anything about it. And
even if they did, if the DAs are funded by a globalist billionaire who hates the United States and wants to normalize child rape, which is the case, a lot of these big city DAs get funded by this billionaire with the agreement that they will not prosecute entire categories of horrible crimes, including child rape and child sex trafficking. And as long as that exists, I could see why law enforcement would focus on other crimes, because You could bring the best case in the world to a DA that's funded by a certain billionaire, and they'll just set it aside. They won't prosecute anyway. So we've got some house cleaning to do nationwide on that front.
So I don't know how ugly this is going to be and how political we can get on your show here, but in 2016, that globalist billionaire, his son's now taken over his global network, who's actually, I understand, worse. I don't know. I've never met him, but they put forward over $3 million and funded our current sheriff. And we now have no proactive human trafficking or sex trafficking. And our drug trafficking group that we had with sheriff's office here has diminished to, from what I understand, less than half of what we had before.
Well, let's unpack that just a little bit. This is not a political issue, but politics is being used. If you consider those who have made themselves enemies of the American people, they have an agenda to have a tyrannical type of control over us. They benefit from chaos and disorder and division. And that's why you have these billionaires funding DAs so that they won't prosecute crimes that are very specifically harmful to the culture. Now, what's more harmful to the culture than deeply traumatizing and destroying the children, right? So what a glaring conflict of interest that anyone should be able to fund the campaign of a judge, attorney general, or DA with the agreement that they wouldn't prosecute harmful crimes of any type. I would say that it's not acceptable. It should be highly illegal. And that's something we need to turn around in every major city and a lot of smaller towns in between. That's the case now too. So America, if you look at the track record of your city on different types of child harm, if you've got a horrible track record there's not prosecuting as many predators as you know are active, there's a problem. And you need to join together, get loud, get proactive, and assert yourselves and remove them and replace them with someone who will act in good faith and serve and protect you, the people. And that includes your children, because the children are precious. I'll get off my soapbox and let you speak again, but I think that just needs to be said. We need to do that nationwide.
Well, I'll jump on mine. Protecting the unborn children. Before anything else, our governor just signed an executive order and took away all prosecutorial powers from all district attorneys.
Mike, we're going to have to cut for a break. We'll come right back though. Folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. We are on with law enforcement and military veteran Mike Crawford. He's got a lot of different types of law enforcement experience: federal, local, motorcycle cop, DEA, sheriff's deputy. He's dealt a lot with things. He's performed extraditions, and he was just talking about, or he's just starting to get to talk about things that he sees that need to be corrected within our legal system. So, Mike, I apologize for having to cut you off for commercial break, but please go ahead and let it fly, if you will.
So here in Arizona, our governor just signed an executive order that takes away all prosecutorial powers from district attorneys on our state law. Since Roe v. Wade took away legal abortions in the country, we reverted back to our previous law that was on the books that said abortions are illegal. And the governor signed an executive order. Now all district attorneys are not allowed to prosecute anybody for getting an abortion or anybody that gives an abortion, doctors or anything else. And she said that all of those cases have to go to our secretary.
She's fighting it.
Our attorney,
okay.
our attorney
AG.
general, our AG here is a Democrat also that doesn't believe in abortion. So bam, everything's illegal again. We have Planned Parenthood that's trying to move onto the reservations because it's federal land, and they're trying to do a workaround through our federal reservations because it's not state land, trying to subvert state law. In my unique authority and my past experience, I've worked with the reservations. On a reservation, you're only protected differently if you are native. If you're non-native, if you're Anglo like me, and you're on a reservation, you're treated just like you're on state land or on the county land or whatever. You're only given special protections on federal land if you're a federal person, which is an indigenous person. Okay, now let's move on from the unborn. here in Arizona with CPS. If a child is in CPS custody, protective custody or temporary custody pending a hearing or whatever, and that child goes missing or is a runaway missing/runaway, they don't do an Amber Alert.
Wow.
That child's not reported under the Amber Alert system. Law enforcement will take a runaway report and that's it. It doesn't get reported under the Amber Alert system because that is a protected child and they don't want to advertise that the child is missing. It causes a humongous gap in trying to recover the child and protect the child.
Of course.
There's a huge gap in these children being found and protected before they can get trafficked and scurried off out of state, out of country. Who knows? You've seen the movie Sounds of Freedom. So we know, how they smuggle them out and everywhere else. Now that movie focused a lot on South America, but it happens just the same here in the United States and in North America.
Yeah.
We have the cartels running wild, bringing in undocumented children into our country. Arizona is a border state. They're coming in by the thousands. All somebody has to do is say, oh, I'm this child's uncle or cousin or older brother. There's no proof. They're not doing DNA testings. And
oh yeah, they abandoned the rapid DNA test. They used to swab them right there and run a test to make sure the child was with their biological parents. That got abandoned as this last election was had 2 years ago.
How many tens of thousands of these children have our government misplaced?
Well, they've admitted to what is it, 83,000 or 85,000, but essentially you have 2 football stadiums full of children that the government admits, oops, they lost.
Yeah, and that's
what does that mean? Like what happens to them? What has become of these children?
And that's the ones that came through that we documented. The gotaways are usually twice the number. I've been down with Sheriff Daniels down in Cochise County and Sheriff Mark Lamb. If you haven't been down to see the border, call me. You have my number. I'll get you down there and you can watch the crossings and you will be absolutely alarmed.
Oh yeah.
Well, Mike, Craig actually was down there right after Super Bowl, and he actually identified 8 that were being trafficked. Most of them were underage, and what were y'all 30 miles from the nearest electrical outlet, and it was
in the middle of nowhere, man.
No electricity, no heat. It was 20-something degrees, 30-something degrees outside.
High winds. Yeah, it was brutal. Nasty night to be out there with like little thin jacket from Guatemala. No hat, no gloves.
Yeah, that's sad.
They would have been, yeah.
And that was just in one spot. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And these major events that they talk about are major focal points. We have numerous here every year, even the big golf tournaments. Any large event brings large problems. And nothing in here in Arizona, a lot of times nothing's being done. Phoenix PD has a great unit, but they're just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Another big issue is a lot of these offenders, they go into jail and they're being coddled. They're getting technology. They have a little like an iPad, and they're continuing to offend from inside jail. They're still trafficking. They're still contacting. They're still doing their sexual predator alerts and tracking, doing their predator online things from inside jails.
There's so many things that are so slack that is allowing the harm to continue. And it's inexcusable. It really is. In any other profession, these types of failures would not be allowed.
No.
In the private sector, you would be fired from your job for such a egregious and gross mismanagement. Yet, in anything that seems to be government run, these government jobs are so hard to lose in some cases. Nothing gets done by those who are performing so poorly. It's just, it's a strange dynamic that people have to realize. In more cases than not, the government, the bigger it gets, the dumber it gets, because the bureaucrats keep writing more rules, and it paralyzes, it grinds everything to a halt. But
and too many times they get a pass.
Yeah.
And they're not getting called to task on it. But that's why good people like us need to stand up and call them out on it. And that's why I'm running, is to call a lot of attention to this. And when I saw who was running for this office, I knew we needed a good person to stand up and make a difference. I didn't know at the time that it was going to be me. My wife and I prayed a lot about it. And at the time in 2020, when I ran the first time, I was still working full time. I was working 40 hours a week as a cop. And we prayed a lot. And finally, we came to the conclusion that I had to throw my hat in the ring and we had to do it. And we did an amazing job in 20. And this time, we learned a lot of little things in 2020 that are making a huge difference this time. And we're on it like gangbusters. We're in it to win it. Not that we didn't try to win it last time, but this time we're really going for it. And
all right, well, Mike, with the time we have left of this segment, let me let you drive people to how to find you and support what you do, and we'll close out.
All right, my website is crawfordforsheriff.com, and it's Crawford, F-O-R, sheriff with 1 R, 2 F's.com. On Facebook, it's Mike Crawford for Sheriff. And the biggest thing is we need financial support to get over the line. I'm up against George Soros money. You know, these billionaires come in and try and change things here at home, but we have to start here at home. The sheriff is a very important job. The sheriff has to stand for your constitutional rights. And here in Arizona, here in Maricopa County, there's nobody that's going to do it but the sheriff. And I'm asking for people's help, and I need your help to stand up for you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. We wish you the best of luck. And that's it for today, folks. Join us next time on Defending Our Children. Welcome to Defending Our Children, everybody. This is our second half of our show with Mike Crawford. Mike, for those of you who did not catch the first half of the show, he's a sheriff's candidate for Maricopa County, Phoenix, Arizona. He's Air Force veteran, and he's served in law enforcement in several different capacities, both federal and local. So we're talking about every manner of harm that we can identify to children, but a lot of sex trafficking that Mike's been privy to and combating, and within our legal system, what has he seen and what fixes are needed. So, and one of the things, Mike, that came up was the Native American tribes and the reservation. That's close to my heart. I've always, played cowboys and Indians growing up, but I wanted to play the Indian as much as the cowboy because I had Catawba and Cherokee blood, and I always felt like I was, I don't know, somehow very connected to my Native American side. So I've always paid a lot of attention to that. But man, the reservations, they get targeted. You mentioned by Planned Parenthood. And for those that don't know, Margaret Sanger is the one that founded Planned Parenthood, and she was into eugenics, which is a white supremacy movement and they eradicate minority offspring. And so what Planned Parenthood does, they target minorities. They go to the slums or the ghettos, or they find minority neighborhoods, and that's where they set up their clinics. And so they do that on the Native American reservations too. And I'm not splitting hairs or making criticisms. Just, I think that it needs to be known that they do specifically target minorities to eradicate their offspring, and they make every manner of deceit and manipulation to bring that about. And it seems like more people ought to understand that that is measurable fact. What do you think of that, Mike?
Well, it's the whole destruction of the family unit. Whenever they started the welfare system, it was intentionally to divide the family unit, to depress marriage and to get the father figure out of the household and encourage the single mothership. And we have to keep an eye on our government. We have to keep an eye on every little detail that they're doing. Here in Glendale, the city I live in, the city I used to work for, that I retired from, the Tohono O'odham Indian Reservation tribe was going to donate. It's part of, they have a casino here in our area, and it's part of the compact that they have to donate certain amounts of their intake of funds to local governments for infrastructure, fire trucks, police cars, help with fire stations, and different things like that. Well, they were going to donate a little over $20,000. I think it was $20,100 something dollars as a pass through. And the city of Glendale was going to give it to Planned Parenthood clinic here in Glendale. When there's a pregnancy assistance clinic within the same distance that my wife and I actually donate a lot of time and services to. And my wife is a major player in this. She's First Nations Mohawk. indigenous. So we don't play with that type of thing. So being our Christian faith, we believe in protection of life, and that's from conception to natural death. And I fought my whole life to protect everyone. So she organized and rallied the troops, and they were going to the city council meeting, and word got out that a whole lot of people were showing up, and city council canceled it. They took it off the agenda and they canceled it. Now, my wife still spoke, and she had signed for 2 different speaks if they were going to keep it on the agenda and if they weren't going to keep it on the agenda. So no matter what, she was going to get a chance to speak, and she did. And she spoke very loud and very clear that we will not stand for this. And you have to keep an eye on your government, even just city council. We had a roundtable not too long ago.
Well, hold on, Mike. Hold on. You say we should keep an eye on our government. Now, I understand what our founding fathers envisioned. I thought it was beautiful, and I happen to agree with you 100%. But what do you mean we have to keep an eye on our government? Don't they aren't they the ones that keep an eye on us because they're all powerful and we should live in fear of them?
Absolutely not. My government works for me. And when I'm the sheriff, I work for you. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never let you forget that of me. When I'm elected sheriff, you call me on it. My phone number hasn't changed in 23 years, and it won't. And you call me. And you call me on everything I do, and you keep track of me. And if I'm doing anything that you think I need to be doing differently, or if I'm not doing something that you think I need to be doing, you call me, because I work for you.
Well, I think that's a healthy outlook. And if more people would remember that, we pay the taxes, those in our government serve we the people, and we have to drive the bus. We can't throw our hands off the wheel of the bus and go back to the back and make ourselves a sandwich and not paying attention. Unless you say, Jesus, take the wheel, you don't have any business letting anybody really take the wheel. We, the citizens, need to drive the bus, because right now we see there's some crazy maniacs driving our bus into the guardrails and off the cliff and everything else. And there's mayhem. We got to get our hands back on the wheel. And I agree with you, and I appreciate you delivering that. I wanted to give you a chance to say that, because we, the people, are in charge. If only we'll just assert ourselves and ensure that we get good governance and hold our elected officials' feet to the fire and get good service out of them.
And might I add to that, these guys are there to protect and to serve. They're not there for you to crap on. Okay. Just because they work for us, you treat them as if they were one of your own kin. And I tell that to my kids. I tell that to anybody that listen, because they think, well, they're working for me. I said, yes, they are working for you, but there's no reason why you can't be respectful to them, because they are getting in between you and bullets and knives and bad guys.
Oh yeah. In the case of law enforcement, absolutely. And even corrupt elected officials, you can speak the truth and hold them to account without screaming at them and being too nasty. I mean, we should all treat each other with respect. I mean, I believe that those that are corrupt need to be thrown out and replaced boldly. Yeah, with law enforcement, it just will not do to misbehave the way our youth are now. No wonder they're getting themselves in so much trouble.
Well, and we need to get some civility back too. I mean, we can disagree, no matter how much like with our governor, no matter how much I disagree with some of the decisions she's made. She was elected and she is our governor. I have to respect that. And that's from my military upbringing. Respect the rank. Yep. Treat that person with respect. We can still disagree, but there may be some avenues where we can find some agreement and we can work together on some things. We have to find a common path for the good of the people. And we need to get back to that. Back in the days of Reagan, I mean, there were a lot of things Reagan disagreed with people on the other side of the aisle, but he found a way with dignity and respect to reach across and to work things out and find a commonality and to make things happen for the good of America and for the good of the American people. But this isn't a Candy Crush world anymore, and we got to get our faces out of our phones, and people need to wake up.
Well, Mike, I think you named something that's very important to truly understand is we've allowed our political parties to become self-serving. And there's a difference between being a public servant like what you described, and being self-serving. And so I think we've allowed the political system to become self-serving, and that needs to change as well. You're there to make society better. You're there to protect people. We may not, like you said, always agree upon or disagree upon whatever topics, but at least our actions should be that which is honorable and measurable. We should be able to measure the results of our efforts, and those measurements should be positive.
100%. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Defending Our Children. We are on with Mike Crawford. We're talking about solutions. Mike's got a lot of data. He's got a lot of knowledge on the different types of crimes. And I love sharing ideas of what can we do about it. But it's important for people to understand how bad some of these situations are so that we can realize we need to intervene. We can't just sit back. Evil prevails when good men do nothing. There's a lot of nothing being done on the corrective side as evil prevails right now. So Mike, what do you see in all that realm? What kind of stats and crimes and mayhem are you witnessing out there? What do people need to know?
Well, a lot of it is education. People, there's a big push for see something, say something. But what do you look for? What does sex trafficking look like? What do you look for? One of the good things, the airlines have stepped up and they've taught the air stewards and what used to be called stewardesses. What do you look for? So with children, does the child look like they belong with the person? It could be called profiling, but it's called a lot of times being aware. Does the child look like the person that they're with? Are they of the same race? Are they of the same complexion? Do they look like they're related at all? It's a start. Then you start looking for other things. You don't base it on just one thing. The black child is with that white guy, or the white guy, the white child is with that black guy. It could be an adoption, and you can't just go on the one simple thing. You need to look at the totality of the circumstances.
Bingo.
With stewardesses, then they'll pull a boarding pass and they'll look at their names. Do they have the same name? Whenever they got on, is the child dressed properly? Is the child wearing really ratty shoes and really ratty clothes, and the adult that they're with is dressed in real fancy clothes? That's a complete mismatch. Why would they be that way? Usually if you're very well dressed, your children usually are too.
Yeah. Now,
sometimes I'm a parent. I have grandchildren. Sometimes the kid dress themselves, they'll be wearing a Superman cape and galoshes, sometimes we let them dress themselves, but when they're traveling, generally that's not the case. But you look for things that are out of order, and a lot of it is just being aware. A lot of times with the cartels and what was in the movie Sound of Silence, it was brought out really well. A lot of these kids get marked with tattoos. Some they're hidden a lot of times, and a lot on the girls and stuff, they'll put them on the back of the neck and the hair hides it and things like that. But if you see something like that, that's a major flag. A child under 18 with a tattoo is a major red flag.
There have been reports of flight attendants picking up on these signs and rescues happening. So we celebrate that when somebody's heads up and willing to take corrective action. It's a beautiful scenario whenever it does happen.
And it's nice for them. They have them in a trapped environment. But what about us, the general public walking around? You've seen the signal. If a child signals you, right. We've seen some of those PSAs on Facebook and Twitter and things. Those are great things to watch for. But if the child hasn't been taught that, they don't know to do that signal. Or if a child is in a car and they put a little card up on the window and you're passing by and you see something, don't just blow it off. Call 911 immediately. The good thing about 911, it goes to the immediate law enforcement agency of that area. It hits the cell tower in that area and contacts the local agency. You don't have to worry about, is this whatever city I'm in? Is it going to call that person? Just call 911 and it goes immediately to the local law enforcement that you're standing in that jurisdiction. The tower that your cell connects to automatically knows which law enforcement agency to contact, and it'll get to the right person. Get a license plate number, get a vehicle description, get whatever description you can. Be the best witness you can. And so a lot of these sex trafficking things can be in a lot of weird places that you wouldn't think of. Watch the carnivals. They pass through town. It's a good way to smuggle kids in and out of town. because they just pass through. A lot of people don't look at the carnies. They don't look at different things because they just pass in and out, and it's just normal, and you blow it off. Recreational facilities, parks, your local mall. These are big places that are targeted by pedophiles and by traffickers, because people will drop their kids off at the mall to go watch a movie or go hang out with their friends, and they're going to be there for an hour or so or more, and they're not expected to be heard from for a little while, and it's an easy target. Make sure your kids have a plan to contact you within so many hours. Have tracking devices on your kids' backpack. Put an Apple AirTag on them. Track their phones. Phones can be disrupted, but put an AirTag on them. They're cheap. They're easy. My grandkids have them. I just let out a security secret, but my kids have AirTags on them. My grandkids do on their backpacks and stuff. They go to charter school, but we got to take these opportunities. Hotels and hospitality areas. You go to the resort or the hotel, people are sitting there watching, because that's not a kid's home area, and they can walk up and say, oh, hey, your parents told me to come bring you over to this area or over by the pool, and they'll snatch your kid and be gone, and you'll never know. They're gone. Beggars and people peddling on the corner, watch out for them. They're standing there watching everything that goes on, and they can snatch somebody and be gone in a heartbeat. And they work in teams with other people. And in big metropolitan area like Phoenix, any big metropolitan area, they can snatch and grab and be gone before you know anything's going on. And kids, small adults, they're gone, and they'll never be heard from again. Domestic workers.
We see that a lot overseas too, with anybody hanging out on the street corners like that. They may be selling something, but it gives them a chance to walk up and down between the vehicles at a stoplight or stop sign and see who's in the vehicle and see if it's who that they mean to target.
Yep.
And then they make a signal and it goes badly from there.
Some of them are just pickpocketers, or they'll just reach in and snatch and grab your purse or your laptop, but they may reach in and grab your kid too. You never know. So some of the examples of sex trafficking, some of the big ones, there's the pimp controlled trafficking, where they get these kids or young adults, somebody's controlling them and making them go out and do sex for sale, and then gathering a large portion of the money that they're making. They usually put them up in a cheap hotel somewhere, and they're tracking all their money and keeping them in kind of an enslavement for the money. Familial tracking. A family member will traffic a young person in their family and sell them for sex. They're doing it on some of these like Craigslist or Backpage or whatever, and they're selling children, and it's a family member. And those are very difficult, because a lot of them, there's a lot of stigma, and it's kept really quiet within the family, and they are almost never reported. There's gang control trafficking. A lot of this is the cartels here along the border. Most of it is cartel trafficking. And then there's buyer perpetrated trafficking, where there's the buyers are going out and actively seeking. There's a huge network on the internet, and until we get control of it, it's really odd that you can go on and say something really benign on Facebook and get a 30-day ban, but there are secret channels on Facebook where people are going out and trafficking children over and over and over, and nobody bans them. And it's not just, I'm not naming just Facebook, and I'm not criminalizing them, but there's a lot of these social media websites. There's kids.
You're right. There's a lot of them that's bad. There's no excuse for it now. Boy, they can censor the things that they want to censor, but when it comes to defending the children, they don't seem to have the will or the technology for that. Well, we're not buying it, folks. Stay tuned. We'll be back with one more segment with Mike Crawford. So stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to Defending Our Children. This is our last segment with Mike Crawford. Man, we've covered a lot of territory. We appreciate your service out there, Mike, the knowledge that you've shared with us. We've got one more segment to share and cover anything else we want. Where would you like to take it from here? What do you think people need to know about what you've seen and how we can protect the little ones?
Biggest thing, how do we protect our children? Be involved. Just have a relationship with your kids. Get out of your phone. Talk to your kids. I've had this discussion with my own children, my adult children. They're in their 30s. I told them, did I do a good job raising you? And they've told me, yeah. And I said, okay, then do that. Take from my example. You don't have to do exactly the way I did. You can tweak it your own way and try different things, but follow that example. I wasn't perfect. I know I wasn't, but I think I did a pretty good job. So with my daughter and her 3 kids, I tell her, don't try and be their friend. You're their parent. You have a job to do. Parent them. They will appreciate you and they'll love you for it. The way you appreciate me and the way you love me for the way I raised you. But be involved. Know where they are. You don't have to have an iron fist, but know where they are. If they're going to go spend the night with a friend, be old school. Meet the friend's parents. Know where they live. Know their phone numbers. Know what their friends' parents do. What they're, get involved. Don't just, you can go run down to the friend's house and not check out, be involved. Know where your kids are. Don't just be sitting on TikTok for 2 hours and not paying attention to what the kids are doing on their phones. Have trackers on their phones. Have things that monitor what your kids are doing on their phones. When they're
Mike,
video games.
It sounds so simple, but it's not as easy as it is simple. It's simple in principle, and it is what we should do. And I think everybody can do better with the little ones. I look back on it. My wife did so much better job than I did, because I was deploying. I was gone a lot. But man, I wish if I had it to do over again, I would do it so much better, And it's simple, but it does take making that conscious decision to be involved and know these things. I love the points that you're making. Please continue.
But most of it's just be involved and be in tune with them and love them and let them know that you're there. And it goes back to my history when I was a DEA agent. And this sounds so dumb, but I would come home and my youngest boy, Liam, gotta love him so much. He's 27 now, and I'm so proud of him. But he would come home from school, and I'd be up and getting ready, getting their dinner ready and stuff. And I'd look over him, and he'd be doing his homework at the table. I'd say, "Hey, Liam, you want a marijuana joint? You want a joint?" He was 6 or 7, and he'd look at me, "No." And his sister, a couple years older, would look at me, "Dad, you're nuts. What are you doing?" And I said, "You want a beer?" "No." And I'd say, "Good." Next day, "Hey, Liam, want some cocaine?" And he'd, "No." "Dad, what are you doing?" "I'm a cop," and they're looking at me like, "Dad, you're nuts." What was I doing? I was programming him.
Yeah.
So if any of his friends asked him, we did it as a joke. We were joking and laughing, I'm helping him with his math homework. "Hey, Liam, you want some cocaine? You want some heroin?" And we'd just laugh. But anytime one of his friends from then on asked him, "Hey, Liam, you want to try a beer? Hey, Liam, you want some marijuana?" Automatically he'd say no, because he'd said it to me so many times. It was easy for him.
He'd already visited the subject. Yeah, absolutely.
I programmed it.
Yeah.
As a joke.
Positively. Yeah. As a protective mechanism.
And now he doesn't use drugs. He doesn't even drink. He doesn't like it. And that's, neither here nor there, but I take a lot of pride in the fact that I helped him out and I made it easy for him. Because when we grew up, it was, this is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. Remember the eggs in the frying pan?
Oh, yeah.
That was so dumb and corny. We'd look at that in high school and go, "That's so dumb." Man, it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. Yeah. And the kids don't have that nowadays. Something as simple and corny and stupid as that. And I was telling somebody the same story the other day, and they're looking at me in horror. "You asked your kids if they wanted heroin?" And I said, "Yeah, we were laughing and joking around." They said, "That's not something to laugh about." But then I finished the story and they're like, "Oh, I get it. That makes sense." But it was just, I was anything I could do, any way I could to make it easy for my kids to say no. Yep. And it was just being involved. And we laugh about it now. And I say, "Hey, Liam, the other day I told him, 'Hey, Liam, you want to get high?' And he looks at me, he says, 'No, Dad, that's still lame and stupid,' but it worked. And it worked.
Yeah. Well, if you don't raise your children and program them, someone else is going to program them to get whatever they want out of your children, which is almost never going to be in your child's best interest. So,
Craig, that's an important point, because what we're as parents are fighting against are our phone devices. The phone devices are programming our kids. And I tell my kids, that's not your phone. That's my phone. It's on my account. So whatever you do, I am responsible for. And so that is why I have the right to inspect whatever it is you're doing.
And that's huge too. A lot of, I would respond to calls when I was a patrolman, and people would tell me, I've lost control of my kid. I don't know what to do. I say, "Take their phone away." "Well, but he needs to talk to," "No, he doesn't. They don't need to talk to their friends. And that's your phone. You paid for that." And the kids, I've had kids call and say, well, I want to report my mom for domestic violence. Really? Why? Well, my mom slapped me in the face. Why? Well, I called her the B word. You're 14 years old and you called your mom the B word to her face? Why? Well, because I didn't do my homework and she grounded me. I'm going to hold you still and let your mom whoop your butt right now. Well, you can't do that. Guess what? It's called discipline. And people have forgotten what discipline is and how to raise their children. And, they want to call the police and get the police involved. The police don't need to get involved until things get out of hand. People need to raise their children. People have forgotten how to do that. And people have forgotten how to get involved and be involved. And they think that, the government needs to do it for them and the school needs to do it. It's not that way. They have it backwards.
Kids are programmed now to where if a parent tries to ask a child twice to eat their veggies and the child doesn't want to, child starts threatening to call Child Protective Service. I'll call CPS on you.
Well, and a lot of it is
Mom, Dad.
being told this stuff at school.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And
you can
we've
tell.
lost control of that too. And we need to step up and we need to take back the school boards, from a parent's perspective. We need people to step up and run for these races and run for local school boards we need to start at home.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Protect our home.
Wouldn't it be so much healthier if we just had normal people back in a lot of these seats rather than these political appointees with a radical agenda that's harmful and destructive?
Absolutely. And that's why I'm running.
Yeah. Well, Mike, speaking of running, go ahead and let everybody know one more time where to find you and how to support you. So
again, my website is crawfordforsheriff.com, and that's Crawford, FOR, sheriff, and sheriff is 1R, 2Fs.com. And it's an awesome website. There's a cool commercial on there that explains where I'm from and kind of what I've been through, where I'm going, and what we intend on doing with the sheriff's office. On Facebook, it's Mike Crawford for Sheriff, and Twitter as well. My wife runs the Twitter. I don't tweet. But we're just trying to get the message out. We need financial support. We're up against a billionaire that's trying to ruin our country and is getting involved here in our local politics. And I'm tougher than lightning, and I'm here to fight for you. Well, there you go. Thank you, Mike. We wish you all the best. And everybody else, return and catch us again next time on Defending Our Children.